Welcome back to the 10-Minute Bitcoin Show. We're going to get you out of here before the next block, and I'm running Temple OS. Guys, we got a bombshell, or at least that's what Rob Wyden here says, this U.S. Senator from Oregon. He says we've got an Epstein bombshell. His staff is releasing a new report showing that J.P. Morgan Chase executives, all the way up to the top, enabled Epstein's sex trafficking operation. You're going to want to read this. Now... We could call this a bombshell, guys, but are any of us really that surprised? I mean, really, truthfully, are any of us surprised to find out that JP Morgan Chase was enabling Epstein's financial operations all the way up to the highest level? I mean, I'm certainly not surprised. You could call it a bombshell. I don't know. So reading further on the senator's tweets here, it says top JP Morgan Chase executives were in contact with Epstein and were aware of his shady financials. Top staff at JP Morgan Chase, reporting directly to CEO Jamie Dimon, closely supervised Epstein's accounts. One even coached Epstein on how to sanitize his suspiciously large cash withdrawals. Now listen, guys. We live in a two-tiered society, okay? You go to the bank, you want to withdraw some cash, you're going to have to fill out a ton of paperwork. The teller's going to look at you suspiciously. They're going to want to know what you're using it for. But if you're a billionaire and you're a PDF file, you just go to the top. You just go straight to the top of JP Morgan Chase, and they'll teach you how to sanitize your, quote, suspiciously large cash withdrawals. Evidence shows that JP Morgan Chase severely underreported Epstein's suspicious transactions to the U.S. government for decades, potentially in violation of federal anti-money laundering laws. This goes on, and of course we remember, right? Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase, is no fan of Bitcoin. He's been saying for years that Bitcoin itself is a hyped up fraud. He said here in this Squawk Box interview that crypto is a decentralized Ponzi scheme. It's a pet rock. Jamie, you're right about crypto. You're right about crypto, my friend. Crypto is a Ponzi scheme, and it is a pet rock, although it is not decentralized. I would not use that term synonymously with crypto, but Bitcoin itself, hyped up fraud, that one I would disagree with. You're not correct about that, my friend. Of course, we know Jamie Dimon changed his tune, fairly recently with the launch of all of these ETFs, managed securities with Bitcoin exposure. JP Morgan's been buying them. JP Morgan's been buying exposure to Bitcoin. I assume, I didn't even double check, but I assume. Oh, this says that this is debunked as misinformation. What are we even talking about here? What are we doing, Pete? Was this real? Who knows? I don't know. We're not going to talk about this. Either way, JP Morgan CEO has been critical of Bitcoin pretty much for as long as I can remember. He's always poo-pooed it. But yet here we have this guy, his top people, helping facilitate this two-tiered financial system for the elite versus, I can't go pull $1,000 out of the bank because they don't want me doing that. And we also have something that we've talked about in the past. If you've followed the types of things that I talk about for a long time, you would know that in 1970, the United States government passed what was called the Bank Secrecy Act, aka the Currency and Foreign Transaction Reporting Act. So when you're looking at some of this stuff that talk about some of these federal anti-money laundering laws, this is the type of stuff that we're talking about here. The Bank Secrecy Act was passed in 1970. I wrote an article on this years ago, back in 2020. The Bank Secrecy Act was passed in 1970 and more colloquially is known as AML KYC, or anti-money laundering law. It's business know your customer regulation. So as a part of this regulation back in 1970, when this law was first passed, the reporting threshold for what needed to be reported to the government in terms of like money moving through financial institutions was $10,000. Now, T-Bain retweeted this tweet that he had from 2020, right around the time I wrote this article, actually. Yeah, I wrote this article shortly after. I would imagine T-Bain, well, he tagged me. Yeah, no, that's what it was. He tagged me, and that's why I thought to write this. So back then, when this was passed, the reporting threshold was $10,000. But they have never adjusted that reporting threshold in dollar terms for inflation since the Bank Secrecy Act was passed in 1970. So in 2020, when T-Bain posted this tweet, that equivalent buying power of $10,000 in 1970 was $65,000 in 2020 dollars. I went back to this CPI inflation calculator and redid this math for today. Well, actually not for today because the data is not current, but as of September 2025. And bear in mind, this is using CPI. CPI is not an effective measure of monetary inflation. It's cooked books, guys. CPI is cooked books. CPI is just the government's way of underreporting real inflation by measuring a basket of goods and making all kinds of substitutions where it's appropriate for them, because governments want to report the lowest inflation that they possibly can, because that means that they can give smaller pay raises to their employees. That means that they can pay out less benefits and keep more of the money for themselves or whatever. So even though your taxes go up because of inflation, they want to still pay out less and less and less, because that's just the way that this Ponzi operates. Adjusted for inflation using CPI as of September 2025, the equivalent purchasing power of $10,000 in October of 1970 is today $82,436.55. Now, like I said, I think that this is underreported, but this is the real bombshell. This is the real bombshell. The real bombshell is that we live in a two-tiered society. And back in the 70s, you could have moved the equivalent of nearly $100,000 without triggering some sort of federal reporting threshold. And today, $10,000 is pennies. I mean, what are we even talking about anymore? Like, so you can't move $10,000 without a bunch of forms getting filled out by your financial institution and reported to the federal government. But the highest level executives, the highest level employees of one of the biggest financial institutions in the world is helping to protect PDF files and helping them structure their financial transactions to avoid these stringent federal reporting regulations. It's messed up. The whole system's messed up. You've got to opt out with Bitcoin. You've got to opt out of the system. You've got to opt in to financial privacy, financial freedom, money that can't be debased. All that they're doing here is they're forcing you into this cage, and the walls are closing in around you. But you can leave. You can just turn around and walk out of the cell and leave, and you can choose Bitcoin. You can choose Bitcoin, which is a permissionless system. It has a token layer that cannot be changed, right? We know that there's a fixed supply of Bitcoin. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. This is part of the social consensus of Bitcoin. It's a permissionless network. No one can stop you from using your money on Bitcoin. There's no reporting requirements to get a transaction approved on Bitcoin. You can move billions of dollars in a single transaction, and all you have to do is pay the fee. Bitcoin is the demolition of the two-tiered financial system, guys. Bitcoin puts everyone involved in the network on a level playing field. There are no advantages that are given to Michael Saylor that you're not able to use on that Bitcoin network, right? But all participants are treated equally because there is simply no ability for the network to discriminate across whatever its native activity is. So buy Bitcoin, hold your own private keys, run your own software, and you basically can have access to this new and novel two-tiered financial system. We no longer have the two-tiered financial system. It's a one-tiered financial system. Bitcoin is a one-tiered financial system. No advantages for everybody, level playing fields for all, financial freedom, financial privacy if you're willing to work for it. We'll continue to improve that. I'm confident that we'll continue to improve transactional privacy on Bitcoin. I think we'll get there. I think we'll get to the point where it will be so good, particularly as we continue to make Bitcoin more and more programmable. Bitcoin will be so good in terms of privacy that we'll have pretty close to complete on-chain privacy. And that's without all of these scam coins like ZEC or whatever, Zcash, that claim to be the kryptonite for Bitcoin or whatever. That's just not the case. Yeah, that's all I got on this one. Play us off, Terry.